What is up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Exciting news for you guys. If you are a little bit newer, I'd say like in years 0 to 3 or 0 to 4, or maybe you're in that 3 to 6 year range as a photographer, whether you're a wedding photographer or another kind of photographer, and you're trying to curate your work to a place where more people are going to see it, more people are going to like it, more people are going to get the impression that you want to give them when it comes to your brand and the images that you share online and in person or in albums and stuff like that. I want to let you know that we're having a free workshop October 27th, Tuesday, 7 p.m. in our Facebook group, togfb.com, or you can just look for the Facebook group, just look for The Bearded Hog on Facebook. You'll come find us. It's going to be free. We're going to kind of walk through little tips and tricks on building a portfolio that helps sell, what you want to sell, right? One of the things I teach all my mentees is to get rid of their safe images that don't align with their brand. So after we've done the work and talked about their why and who they are and what their mission and purpose is, then we go and look at their images and say, hey, does this align with what you've told me? And it's kind of hard. But they say, no, it doesn't, but then they're more proud of the images that they do share. And it really helps them kind of stay on track to have imagery that attracts clients that they want to work with, right? It's kind of this cyclical thing that's happening. And so October 27th, 7 p.m. in our Facebook group for free. Would love to have you come watch this workshop live and talk about building a portfolio. We're probably going to ask for images soon if we haven't already in the Facebook group, so we can kind of talk about that stuff. So if you haven't submitted an image yet, come hang out in the Facebook group and we'll get that going. So today's guests, Seattle photographers, weddings, seniors, families, influencing, Patreon, YouTube. They do everything and they do it well, which I know if you're like me, that's super frustrating because I can barely do one thing well. Ike and Tash have been in the industry for a long time. They've spoken at conferences. They've hosted conferences. They've done on tons of podcasts. I'm so glad that I could get them on here. This episode is incredibly needed, incredibly useful. I would invite you to listen to the whole thing and really pay attention to this. I think there is a lot of value here. And if you are not a person of color and you're listening to this episode, then it's going to be valuable for you, I believe. And don't worry, we ask the questions. There's no shame or blame at the spot. They're super nice about everything, but we get a chance to kind of talk about some of the things that need to be talked about still during this time. So incredible episode. I absolutely love Ike and Tash. So without any further ado, here's Ike and Tash. Ike and Tash, how's it going? What's going on?
Man, it's good.
Probably the busiest week we've had this entire year.
Yeah,
probably.
Right now we're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. What do you got going on?
So like we're remodeling our bedroom. We got like a bunch of sessions. Like I have an engagement session later today.
We have a session every day this week.
Yeah.
We're planning for the photo cookout, which is next week, but we're doing it virtually. Plus, our child is doing remote learning. Our toddler is destroying our house. Mm-hmm. I'm cooking a new baby. And we have Patreons, YouTubes, blogs, and Instagrams to keep up with.
Yeah.
Wow. That is intense. That's intense.
It's just a little bit of work, light work.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it got us out of all the rhythm, like COVID and everything at the time of this recording. Like, we were all ready for, that April, May, June, punch. And then I imagine for you guys, as like myself, it kind of got pushed away, not a lot happening. And Seattle's very similar to DC in the sense of like weren't really allowed to shoot non-essential kind of stuff for a while too, and then couples were scheduling. And then what we can shoot now, it's like the floodgates opened and you're like, oh, like at least for me, I probably should change the color on my calendar. Any shoot is red and my whole calendar's red. I'm like, oh God, like what am I doing?
Yeah, so, it's the same. We were just starting to pick up and then the fires happened.
Oh,
and so we went from like COVID into fires, and then it was just like, okay, so we're just now like making up for what was lost, and it's just all hitting all at once.
Yeah. So. And it's like, we'll just get started off a random question now that I'm curious about. Just in that situation, I'm always curious about other photographers, especially with families, who have like actual people that rely on them versus like single photographers. Like, what does that boundary look like for you guys right now? Are you guys like, hey, we'll shoot any day right now to make up time because we know that couples need it. We don't want to make any couple wait. Or do you have like a certain day that you're like, no, we don't do anything on that day, or, we don't shoot anybody?
I'll answer this just because I keep our schedule. I'm pretty, I cling to it, and I don't allow it to be jeopardized.
Yeah.
The work, and I think it's important, but I also feel like balance in our life is necessary for our children and for the other projects that we have. So we tend to shoot, we have like 4 days a week that we've set aside for shooting. The other 3 are absolutely off. And it's only if the offer is a really good one, or either one of us is like, you know what, we want to do this because we have goals or we want to do something, or we use them as backup dates for things that get rescheduled. Because now what's going to happen is we're going to head into rainy season. So our shoots are going to get canceled because of the rain. And so we need to have those dates reserved for backup. So
you're like, it's sunny. So like it rained Saturday for us. Sunday was partly rain. And then like last week was all rain. This week is all sunny.
And so this week's sessions are all the sessions that got canceled from last week.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. And then still, like 4 days that you'll shoot. And then I guess if you do have weddings on the weekends, then you're lightening it up during the week and say, hey, it's only 2 or 3 dates available during the week if you have a wedding on the weekend.
So we still maintain it. We're still maintaining our normal shooting dates. So our shooting dates for seniors are Tuesday, Thursday. And if we have a busier like schedule, which is kind of strange for seniors right now, we'll do senior shoots Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We absolutely do not shoot seniors on the weekends.
Right.
We reserve those days for families and weddings.
Yeah.
So we usually average like a wedding a month. And then I would say, over the course of like our bookings, like if we had to spread it out over a calendar, we're probably doing 1 Saturday a month. And then we probably average like 2 family sessions, which we can fit on another Saturday. So we generally have our weekends open at least 2 weekends a month. And we don't shoot on Sundays at all, unless it's personal projects.
Sure. Okay. That's awesome. I love too what you're kind of walking through calendar stuff, which was not what we intended to talk about, but I love hearing the nitty gritty of like, if you're either you have goals to make, if you're going to give up one of those dates, or like, some of us after shooting for a long time, like you get that email and you're like, this sounds pretty cool, but it's on one of these dates I reserved off, or, maybe it's an anniversary, right? Or something, or a kid's birthday. And you ask them what their budget is and they say this number, and you're like, okay, yeah, I would gladly do that. You're like,
Ike has definitely missed some of Wisdom's birthdays.
Well, so like it's 2 of us, right? So I'm the wedding guy, so I shoot the wedding. So like she'll say like, oh, we have weekends for weddings, but it's me that goes and shoots the wedding. She'll stay home most of the time. Now, every now and then, if a client like knows Ike and Tash and they want Tash there, we'll book her as a second photographer. Or if I make a mistake and double book us, then she has to shoot one and I have to shoot another. Like that happened a few weekends ago.
Oh, and I was mad. I didn't want to give up my weekend. I definitely am a lot more spoiled in this situation because I'll just be like, I don't feel like it. And he's such a good sport.
So I was like, hey, I'll shoot, because we booked one wedding. Well, one wedding got pushed back, and another one they booked in me not paying attention to the calendar. We're like, oh yeah, we got that day open. And so like the week before, we're like, oh, there's another wedding that day. But we were already like knee deep in like setting stuff up. So we're like, okay, I'm going to go shoot this one. Then you go shoot this one. And then I'm going to come take over. You go home. And then that's the behind the scenes.
And Tosh was not excited about that conversation, was she?
I just am pretty, after this is like my 11th year that I'm going into of doing photography, and I'm tired. And so I don't like when my time is taken unexpectedly. Very spoiled. She is very spoiled, just like her children.
No, it's okay. It's good to have boundaries. It's okay. I literally a few months ago, ironically during COVID, right? So people were thinking like, oh, we have all this free time. I was trying really good to still have my own boundaries of all kinds of stuff. And so I had a good friend of mine reach out and he was like, hey, I want to talk to you about this specific topic, which I'm like, thanks for even just having a topic that you want to hang out and talk about, you wanted my advice on or whatever. I was like, that's great. Like, I'll make at first, like at the first email, if I want to do it, I was like, here, I'll give you all the time in the world. Like, let me know when it would work or whatever. And then he's now rescheduled twice. And it's not a fault of him or no fault of any, like, I don't disrespect him or anything like that. But one of the boundaries I'm trying to keep in my place was for them was like, you know, no reschedules or after 2 reschedules, then it's a no-go unless it's like a really cool project or something like that. And I say that ironically because we've rescheduled this like a million times on my fault. You know, but both for good reasons and then for like, hey, bad reasons or, you know, trips and all kinds of stuff. But I think like, you know, that's one of those things where growing up and even like you start building your business, you say yes to everything and you have to learn to say no.
Yeah.
And it feels so awkward and weird. And then you're like, are we missing something? Is my, you know, for me and this guy, I'm like, is my relationship with this guy going to suffer? Hopefully not. Like, hopefully he respects that I have boundaries, you know, just like I wouldn't come over to your guys' house at 1 a.m. or something, you know, like little kind of.
No, it's so important
like
because we teach people how to treat us, right? And so I think a lot of those boundaries that I have in place for not only our business, but our life is about losing so much time in the beginning of our business and not having them and just looking back and really having a lot of regret and feeling fear. You know, fear is like a big, huge reason why we say yes to a lot of things and sacrifice our time. I don't remember a whole lot of Wisdom's childhood, like the early parts of it, like from giving birth to like probably 2, because we were building this business and it was just like the only thing that I was thinking about. And I feel like I mean, she doesn't know that, but as I'm raising courage and even with the new baby, there are just moments that I don't remember having with her. And so I don't want to have those moments taken away because at the end of the day, this photography business is a blip of my whole life, you know? Yeah. So that's just kind of how I feel about it.
No, I love
that. But there are 2 of us, so I can always be like, I don't feel like it and send them out, right? So
I love it. It's audio only, but if you saw Ike's face right now, the podcast people, he's like, yeah, I'm stuck with this.
You know, I enjoy weddings, so I don't mind it. So I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do it. You know,
he loves weddings. He comes alive, and I'm like looking at the clock. I'm like, I've seen this before. This has been done. I know it's new for them, but after like 200 times, I'm just. But I'm also not. I don't watch rom-coms. I'm not a hopeless romantic. Yeah. So it's just not my. It's not my thing. I don't get excited about rings or details. Like weddings, so. He likes clowning at weddings.
Yeah, I like to have fun, and I have fun at weddings. So.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. With COVID, it's been kind of weird. Like, I love the tiny wedding vibe. And, you know, right now we're shooting like, I think the biggest wedding I've shot since March is like 35 people. So nothing crazy. But I do miss like the, you know, the reception. You know, I'm an extrovert. I love people getting crazy. Like, my goal is I want your photos to almost get you fired. You know, like that's my big goal. And we don't have any of that right now. Like, there's no dancing. There's no craziness. There's no, you know, this person's been dieting for 6 months and they're finally going to have their first drink of alcohol that night. Like, there's none of that. And it's just, hey, bye. See you guys. Thanks for inviting me. You know, there's no
so
epicness.
Boring, right?
And like, I shot one wedding and I kind of felt bad. I was like, man, they paid us all this money and like 10 people are here. And I'm just sitting around here like. I'm going to shoot these great pictures, but it's like, you know, because you build up like a price list and you charge, you know, for like, you know, expecting a certain amount of work to do. And you're like, all right, I'll deliver this quality of work. And you're like, okay, it's like 12 people here. This is going to be way easier to shoot. I'm going to be kind of sitting around looking silly for the most of the day. And I'm just like, yeah, you guys still paid the full price. Oh, right.
Yeah, it's like weddings that are less than 20 people. I'm like, I don't need a family photo list, guys. Like, I can make every combo in 30 minutes and we'll be good, you know?
You do group photos. Like, let's do everybody. Everybody's here. Let's do a group photo. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I one of my little tricks that I teach all my mentees is I start big and then I just start pulling everybody away because I'm like, in theory, you've already got the parents in the couple, so I'm like, we could just, you know, Uncle John, get in, you're out of here, you know, whatever. So, I want to know more about you guys. So, you know, the background I have from, you know, kind of stalking on Instagram and social media and the website is a mix of Ike is like the Patreon, YouTube, photographer, loves to be on the gear side of things, maybe loves weddings. Tash, as in Ike's word, is the mouthpiece, the influencer, mom, badass, senior photographer. Some of this is mine.
Oh, okay. I was like, that don't even sound like something he would say.
Yeah, I just said like the mouthpiece kind of thing of the brand. And so give me a little background. And Seattle, which is awesome. So give me a little background on you guys, kind of how you got started. Did you guys start photographing stuff together? Or did that happen along the way?
I'll let you go.
Tash has always kind of been into photography, and I've kind of always been into visual arts, I guess. Like, we met online on MySpace. I'm from Virginia. She's from Seattle. We met on MySpace in October 2005. We met in real life in January of 06, got married in August of 07. And then she picked up the camera and started taking it seriously like around 2009. And then I started to join her. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I wanted to join it. But like all during that time, like back in college, I think she like had a film camera and took some film photos, wanted to take pictures in high school, but couldn't get into the photography class because you had to be like a favorite. And so like she's always had that little bit of background. And in me, like I've always liked documenting stuff on video. So like when we met, like I had sent like this video collaboration of basically like a vlog. I was kind of a vlogger before vlogging was a thing, trendsetter. Yeah. And so I sent her like a couple vlogs of myself just so she can get an idea what I was like, because we were online in 2 different states across the country. And so I figured, but like I kind of had created this whole thing called Ike's Adventures. And then when we got together,
they were actually really good. Now that I'm like kind of thinking about it, for them to be like ahead of their time. Because now that's like such a been a YouTube star now.
But like if you like when you think about like our history and like little moments of situations, like
it's always kind of been there.
Yeah, visual arts at least has been there. And so like I always wanted a video camera during our marriage, but we got the digital camera. And then when cameras could make videos, I immediately started doing behind the scenes videos of our early shoots. So the photography motion, that's kind of always just kind of grown, but she initially started the business and started learning photography. And then I started to kind of jump in as I saw like it was cool. And I was like, I like photos.
Now, let me tell you something. This one right here was not happy. I was just like, what are you doing? This is my thing. Like, why are you trying to encroach on my moment? Like my thing that I love so much. And this woman that was really wise at the time was just like, your business will never be what it's meant to be until you let him be a part of it. And so
I was already technically a part of it.
He was showing up, but it was still named after me.
Yeah.
And so what would happen? So as we like kind of got into our business, I think we were probably 1.5 years into business. I got pregnant with Wisdom. And I knew that like things were going to change. But what would happen is that people, when he would show up to shoot something under the LaTasha Haynes photography umbrella, people were just like, you're not Tasha. Like, where is she at?
Because she's always been like the front person, the mouthpiece, like the mascot.
Star.
Yeah, the mascot in some kind of ways. And so like if the business is called, the LaTasha Haynes photography or LHP, and then I show up, they're like, oh, it's some associate. But like I've been to almost every shoot. There's probably like when she started shooting, probably like 3 shoots I didn't go to.
Yeah,
I was been at every shoot, and so learning right alongside her. And so when she went to Arizona and learned, she came back and like taught me everything she learned. So I was just as much of a part of the business as her, but it didn't kind of reflect in the branding.
And so in 2013, after having our daughter, we relaunched as Ike and Tash. We branded the ampersand around who we were, and we just kind of went all out. And that was really actually when things like took off, because I think during that time, there weren't any African-American husband-wife teams in the industry. We were young and different. We had a really urban style, which was not the light and airy vintage thing that was really popular at that time. And so I think that we just stood out. And then we were super confident and kind of cool. Now we're old, but we were cool back then. And we had created this street team thing, this senior model program that was really unique. And I think senior photography had only been around for a few years at that time, 2012. I think like the first senior photography that I've heard of or saw was like in 2007, then really picked up in 2009. So I feel like we were at the front end of that with this idea around senior models. And that really launched our career. I think we became known for our senior work. I mean, we did other things, but we just had such a unique way about approaching seniors that's kind of how our name got out in the industry. That same year that we changed the Ike and Tash, we also launched our first conference, and that also did very well for 5 years. And so that's been our journey through the industry. And now after all this time, I think what has happened is, like most people, like people pivot. A lot of photographers become educators and start courses and things like that. And I think in some ways we have pivoted in that direction, but outside of the industry. Still in the industry, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, we're still photographers full time and still really love this industry, but we found a way to pivot and to maximize our skill set in other arenas, which has been really fun. Ike with YouTube and me with influencing. And so that's kind of the next part of our journey that we're in.
Yeah, I've like, outside of like, you know, learning whatever she knew, like I can sit and watch a YouTube video and kind of deconstruct things after a while. That's kind of, I can learn that way. And so I learned a lot on YouTube. And so I figured like, I sat back one day and was like, well, I saw how much money people make on YouTube. And I was like, these guys are doing this and they're not even, I'm like, I'm as good as this guy, if not better than some of these dudes. And they're making these videos. I'm like, I can make these videos too. And I'm black. And I'm like, I didn't see too many black people making YouTube videos and photography. So I was like, well, there's a space for me. Like, I won't jump into a space that's super crowded. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things. But if I feel like, there's a problem to be solved here, there's a way we can solve this problem. Or there's a space for, you know, representation and things like that. And so like, even with the senior photography thing, like that's is not super saturated. And so there was a space for us, especially us being black, you know, like you add like, oh, this is cool talent in this industry. Oh, and you're black. Okay. All right, cool.
Are those two things, this is a genuine, like curious question. Do you think that those two things, like, especially we'll say like the last like 2 to 4 years, do you think being black and being cool, like, do you think those things are synonymous to some of your clients where they're just like, Ike and Tash are cool, and they're like, they 100%. Are black? Yeah.
It sounds so crazy, but we know that is one of the things that people are drawn to about us is that we are like we're aware of like black culture and world culture, and we're trendy. We know what's going on. And I think the fact that we're black does help us and give us a leg. I think it can be frustrating at times, clearly, like right now in America, but I think there has been some benefits in helping us to stand out in a very like homogenized industry, right?
It's kind of like, it's in a way, I guess you can call us like a crossover, you know, like in the music industry, like when, you know, like a certain artist crosses over and they become like more, first they're like underground and they're like all certain cult following, but then they kind of get like more mainstream. I think in a way, like when I think back, and I can do that now, being that we've done this for so long, I can think back and like, man, we kind of in a way crossed over because I'm from Virginia, right? And she's from here. And culturally, like the South and the East Coast is very segregated. It's a lot of traditional history in the South and in the East. And being from Virginia and like the whole Confederate flag thing, like I grew up around the Confederate flag in my backyard, not literally, but just like, I never thought about it. And it was kind of like a thing, you know, but like I moved out here and it's not a thing out here. And if you see somebody with a Confederate flag out here, you're kind of out of place. Cause it's like, this is the West. Like that has nothing to do with out here. But in Virginia, it makes sense. It's kind of like, okay, I get it. I see where you're coming from.
Oh no, we would be appalled. Like it would be like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like we don't get down like that out here in the Northwest. That's why people come here. Me
coming from the East Coast / South Virginia, and where white people hang out with white people, black people hang out with black people, Asians hang out with Asians, Mexican, like everybody hangs with their people, and you know we all get along, but you know stay over there and do your thing. Out here, everybody's kumbaya, everybody passive aggressive. let's all get along, like, you know, rainbows and all that stuff, literally rainbow. Anyway.
Yeah.
You're so stupid.
Anyways.
I love it.
Right. No. So like out here, it's just a different. So I had to kind of like, you know, sometimes I explain it where in Virginia, when you're the only black person in the room, you know it and you feel it. Like I feel like I'm the only black person in the room. Out here, I could be the only black person in the room, and it doesn't feel like I'm the only. I just feel like I'm around a group of friends, and I don't feel like out of place. And so that's kind of the difference. And so carrying that into photography, because you started doing photography out here, we're able to get a very diverse clientele. Yeah. And like we were influenced by a very diverse a group of people. So like when we were getting in the industry, like all of our black counterparts knew all of these black photographers that we hadn't heard of. We're like, oh, we know all of the, you know, Jim Gardners and Bambi Cantrells and stuff out here. And on the East Coast, my friends are telling us about like
Joshua Dwayne,
Ross Oscar Knight, like these guys. And so we're like, oh, we didn't even know these people existed. Oh, and they're really good. But like just being out in the West Coast and having like that diverse I guess like influence and competition as well as clientele helped us like expand and kind of grow in that crossover sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I think being in a city, I've learned from moving from a small town where Confederate flags fly, even as a white dude, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. And you know,
but you guys lost. Like, what? Anyway,
right? Exactly. No. Yeah, that's another podcast. We'll talk about that.
That's
low
key treason, but okay, all right. Anyways,
you guys can come on Instagram Live anytime. Let's hit it. But like, you know, I think there is like there's just like a city vibe too in general. I feel like on the East Coast, you have to do maybe not even DC, but like Philly or New York to get that kind of culture, and then on the West Coast, like Seattle, like of course it's going to be different and kind of cool vibes and kind of like, you know, that stuff is, you know, talked about and embraced, but never thought of like a dividing line, you know. And again, it's kind of an embracing, you know, of culture. So I think that's really, really cool. That's awesome.
I think what also has been helpful too is that we were in Seattle when the whole creative live movement started taking off.
Yeah, Chase Jarvis.
So we got like a really great opportunity to connect. Like I'm still very, very dear friends with Arlene, who
Location.
I mean, we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. We were the right people in the right place at the right time doing the right thing.
Ike Tash was doing this thing back in the day. Like,
and we were pug leaders for like 6 months before.
Because we were connected to people who were connected to Ike Tash, and Ike Tash was a big part of the industry at the moment. And so people who were like new people introduced us to like, so we met a lot of
cool. Yeah. And so we kind of, it's weird because in a lot of ways, I feel like our career fast tracked, but in so many ways, I feel like we're so behind the curve in comparison to our counterparts too. Sure. And so there were a lot of advantages of being who we were as Black husband, wife, photographer, but there was also a lot of rooms that we could walk into, but tables we couldn't eat at. So it's been like a really, for me, especially, I think less for Ike because he's just not as invested. But for me, it's been really emotional being a part of this industry and working so hard and trying to figure out like, why am I waiting so hard to be recognized? Why aren't people seeing that we've been doing these things for all of these years? Like, why are they not noticed? And that I always had a little bit of resentment just towards that process and that journey because I just never understood why the divide was so great. It just never made sense to me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. One of the things I was thinking about was like, you know, the idea of like being in the right location, having connections is awesome. And I'm a big fan of that. And I've been blessed by a lot of that. But I think those connections and stuff only work and they only catch fire if you guys are already awesome, you know, and I think that's for any of that success, like that's what happens. And it's like, because if you guys were awful, you know, photographers or not that great at speaking or needed to get your chops up or something like that, then it's like, you know, oh, okay, yeah, we had this great connection. That's when they hire somebody else the next year. Yeah, you know, you're like, oh, okay, it wasn't us. Which happens, you know, like that's something we have to think about all the time. But no, it's one of those things that I've learned. One, by moving to DC and just starting my business, I was very open, but it was like I had a very safe way to kind of learn about culture because you get that email, right? Like 7 years ago, Adam, do you shoot interracial weddings? And I had already shot a few, like in my brain. I actually shot them in person, but so in my brain, I wasn't even thinking about them. I was just like, oh yeah, that's Reggie and Dwayne or whatever, and like wasn't even thinking about this, and until it was a thing, and I was like, oh okay, like there are people that don't do this, or there are people that are against this, or whatever.
Right,
and that moved up to to now, where at least me being in DC, Chocolate City, right? Like Black Broadway, like I've led worship at Lincoln Theater, and it's a big deal. And I've gotten a chance to learn a lot, and now I'm like, okay, yeah, this is no longer this abstract thing. Even for me, this is my community, like people I care about, my neighbors, the city, etc. And then that gets fleshed out, in your brand just by being there. But it's and then it's kind of this. I have gotten to see a lot of the like, hey, like, do you guys know Ike and Tash? Like, they are. If we need a husband and wife team to speak at this thing, like, they're the you guys everywhere, and it gets looked over, or you forget it, or you miss it, or whatever, and it's tough.
Okay,
not you guys everywhere, but you know what I mean.
No, but let's talk about that. Like that, I have turned down so many conferences the last 2 years because. Yes, we have spoken. Yes, we are well spoken. But there are so many other people. And I shared about this a little bit earlier this year, back in June, when there were a lot of like conversations and things around just equity and inclusion and things like that. It is beautiful to be sought after. We're not sought after in the same ways our counterparts are at all. Like, I mean, we're just not. Like, that's the reality. But it's like when someone needs a Black speaker, we're usually contacted, whether it's myself or Ike and I together. And I realized that as fun and as amazing as it has been, and as many doors as we have been able to open, we've also closed a lot of doors for other people because we are tokenized so often. And so in the last like year and a half, we've been turning down conferences and events and sending a list of other people because we felt like we've spoken everywhere. At this point, speaking is amazing and it's a really great opportunity, but it's not changed our life in any way. Like we still are living very regular. We're not rich yet. It just hasn't changed anything about our life. And we're not getting the same leg ups that other people are getting. It's not like we're being paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak. Not that anyone is, but we're not even getting paid with what other people are getting paid. And so for me, it's just like, as much as it is wonderful to be honored, if we're not being honored the way that other people are being honored, then what's the point? That's number one. And number two, we're not the only option. And we don't want to be tokenized. And so we were just getting to this place where it was starting to get really dangerous. And even now, after this whole like amplified melanated voices and share Black stories and all the hashtags and tag words, the amount of podcast requests and interviews we've gotten from people who have not a single person of color on their lineup that have known us and known about us for the last 11 years is ridiculous.
We as in she, because she gets all the emails. And so like, if she doesn't want to speak, we don't speak. Like, so.
I mean, I run it by you.
Yeah. And I'm like, what do you want to do?
I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it.
It's never, maybe there's might've been a once or twice where like, I wanted to do it.
We did Imaging USA because of you. Cause I was totally like, I was like,
no, we should do it. Yeah. But like most of the time, if she's like against it and I could care less, then we don't do it. But if
I'm never against it. Like he makes it sound, I'm just like, what's really happening here?
Totally. Yeah.
And I'm trying to now, this is a part of boundaries, right? It's like, I'm trying to read between the lines here. Like what's the advantage? What's the gain for the person who's asking? And what are we really getting from this?
Totally.
So.
No, 100%. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys being here. So, take that, other podcasts. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But no, back to the serious thing. That's the whole thing that I've noticed, recently. But then again, just like these are conversations that I'd never heard. But again, after 7 years living in DC, now they're neighbors and friends. And I've been the only white guy in a room before recently. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So like, and it's not even like oh, like I'm uncomfortable. It's just like, I don't know. It's just something natural. Like when you are in a room and you like are aware of your race and your position in America, and you just are surrounded by a different race. You're like, okay, I stand out here. And it's always like that at weddings. Like the wedding I shot a few weeks ago was like, I was the only black guy at the entire event. And I felt, it was like, oh, cool. I was just having a good time. And it's just like, it's just cool. But like being black in America, I'm always aware. Like I'm never like, no, I'm like, okay, let me look around. Okay, cool. And like, like I said, being out here, it's just it's a lot less stressful being black.
That's awesome.
As it is than it is being black in like Virginia or like Georgia or Mississippi or something like that. At least in my opinion. That's just from my experience.
No, totally. One of the things I was thinking about when you guys were talking is also the idea of like, because we can see it, you can feel it, and it's like, I don't even know the right way to say it, but it's like, black people are not your marketing. Like that's what I want to tell even like Instagram or conferences or whatever. And it's like, I don't get it. Like it's and again, from what I've been told from friends and kind of, it's like appreciated to have, maybe Instagram adopt some cool graphics and, push a lot of stuff like that, or Target to say, hey, here's our black owned vendors that we're, kicking butt with or something like that. But at the same time, it's this balance of like, guys, like where was the intentionality when things weren't on fire, or when things weren't the height of marketing, or like Breonna Taylor, like if she was a model, her likeness would have been hundreds of millions of dollars, for all this stuff. And, she got nothing, right? And that's like, that's one of the big things I see that frustrates me is like, okay, yeah, like it's cool to use this as like your marketing, and I'll even bite and be like, oh, it's probably well intended, like let's say it's a good thing and these are your company values, and but it's still, I can't imagine like how it just feels like am I a checkbox, or like Tasha said, like, if I'm speaking at the keynote and other person speaking at the keynote, listen, even if they are bigger, we need to be paid comparably, or whatever. Like I am not your marketing. I'm a keynote speaker, and it's I don't know. It's one, sorry, and then two, like, what the fuck?
Well, so like, in some ways, I personally don't mind the tokenization as long as, like you said, we're being like, taken care of, compensated, like all that good stuff. Because in some ways, like, I feel like somebody's got to do it. Like, and for me, what influences me to do things or to reach out is just seeing other people like myself in these spaces. And so like, I feel like, it's okay. As a YouTuber, right? As a YouTuber in the YouTube space, and just speaking from that experience, I didn't see any black people who were like making YouTube photography videos. There might have been one or two, but they weren't posting. Honestly, if I would have saw like one or two or three people that were like me, really cool, posting YouTube videos, I probably would have never made a YouTube channel, because I'd have been like, oh, they're doing it. They're cool. I'm not going to be better than them. Let me just let them rock. But because I didn't see anybody in that space, I felt like, okay, let me go and be the one. And honestly, my whole intention and my mantra, whatever the word you want to call it, is like, I just want to influence the next person. So if I have to be the black guy and be on everybody's show and like be the one black face that's like, cool, I'm hoping that like somebody sees me and says, wait, if he can do it, I can do better than him, and take it to the next level. And so even like at these conferences or like shows and things like that, if we're the only black person, like I said, being compensated, being taken care of, make sure it's the right reason. And then like, I'm just hoping that we can open doors for other people. Like, granted, they might pick us over some up and coming black person, and that sucks. But there might be somebody who, if we didn't show up, there would be no black person there. Yeah. And then I don't know if that's any better, especially for, I guess somebody who's like wondering, like, how come we don't see black people in the...
Yeah, I mean, if an organization or an event is not going to choose a black person because of level of comfort, and they're like, Ike and Tash are the only ones we feel comfortable with, and yeah, of course, like, we want representation. It sucks but that's the problem. Yeah. For me, like, that's the problem, because there are so many talented, gifted teaching photographers out there who are under the radar and just need a chance to be seen. And so I feel like now after all of these years, you know, Ike and I have been teaching since 2012, 2013. I mean, on the national stage, like we started teaching before that, like mentorships and things like that. And that's how we kind of built our own kind of natural following. But I just feel like after all of this time, I personally can't settle for the fact that like we're it, because I know so many other gifted people. And I feel like we have a responsibility at this point now to use our platform and to use our little bit of pull or whatever we have to help elevate other voices and give other people opportunities. So I'm not just like, no, we're not going to do it. But I also am like, we're in a new season of life where we're raising our very young family, where we're taking on other bigger opportunities. And so why would I not relinquish those opportunities or that power to somebody else and give somebody else a chance?
Here, we're going to pass, but here's some people that you might want to consider, or here's a thing like that. And so like B&H had us on 21 Questions kind of podcast thing. And they're like, who do you think we should interview? And in my head, I'm like, I have to name 3 Black people. Like in my head, I'm like, who's 100%. Black that I can refer them to, that I feel like would do a good job and represent well and all that stuff like that. And, you know, I kind of look at life at a broader, because, you know, people, we kind of focus on the industry and like, oh, how's the industry? And I'm like, people are people. And, you know, white people are going to do what white people are going to do, and Black people are going to do what Black people are going to do. And so like, sometimes I'm like giving people a break. I'm like, look, they're white. So they're looking at a list of white people. They're probably going to just look at the white people and not even be like intentionally not blocking out Black people, not care. They're just like, here's a list in front of me and I follow this person, that person, this person, that person. They're all great photographers and they're white, but I just like them. And white people end up getting pushed in front of Black people. And you have to be intentional about finding a person of color because like, you know, we're like number 30 on the list, and you have to skip past all of these people just to find one and say, hey, let me actually intentionally get them, until it becomes like secondhand nature. And it just, it won't be like that for a long time, because, you know, people are people. Yeah.
I think too with even like my podcast, like we'll do this at the end, like full disclosure, but then even like B&H, right? Like I'll assume good intent. They also like, you know, you guys are the hookup, you know, or whoever they talk to. They're like, Ike and Tash, like help us, you know, shine light on these group of photographers or these people that we don't know, you know, like that group of that group of African Americans here in DC, where I was the only white person. It was a group of photographers, and like we've had 6 of them on the podcast, you know, because I was like, oh, I didn't know, you know, and it wasn't a thing of.
You guys have some of the best photographers in that area too, like some really crazy talent.
Well, and so like, you know, part of it is that like me and Tosh, we were intentional about being at these events and showing up to these places because we wanted to put our Black faces in front of people. And we were like, hey, because we kind of almost fell into that trap. Like when we first picked up the first rangefinder, all you see is, you know, Jose Villa, Jasmine Star, you know, Jim Garner, Bambi Cantrell, like Bob and Don, like the old guard, like those guys are classics, right? And like Jared Guion is still one of my favorites to this day. Like I know about Jared because of a magazine that told me he's who you should know. And I like found his work and I'm like, oh, he's really cool. But had G-Day, who I'm friends with now and found out after the fact, had G-Day been in that same magazine up front, I would have known about G-Day way longer. We had to find G-Day through like friends of friends, through like outside. And then we talk to these people and they're happy doing their own thing. They're not even really like chasing the spotlight per se, or even trying to like be out. They're just doing their own thing. They just happen to be really talented and have a lot more to offer. Like if they would just, hey, come to this event because like, you know, you do well here if you came too, type of thing.
Yeah, it's funny, like the just the whole situation. It's also too, it's like, you know, even for me when I started this podcast, it was like there weren't a lot of photography podcasts around that were like very practical. It was always like bring on the light and area influencer to talk about the thing that people who like light and area influencers like to, you know, just drive traffic. And I was like, you know, I started my business. I never second shot, and I never really got, you know, for probably 5 years, and never had any formal training, you know, and my background was in like video production and film. And so I was like, man, let me just make a podcast that's like hyper honest and, you know, silly about this photography journey. And for me, it's kind of like a boring, fat white dude from a single parent. Like, let's see what we can do. And even some of the episodes, like my friend Gary Williams, who came on, I asked him about like racism in the creative industry because he runs an agency. And I was like, one, because it's good podcast content and it's needed. But also, it was like, for African American listeners, they have a list of other things like you guys have been mentioning too that they have to think about when it comes to business or choosing to speak or all these kinds of things. And I was like, this is also going to be useful, in addition to, representation or, I think of you guys, if you've probably been to conferences where you're probably the first African American somebody met, which is a whole other.
I mean, I get emails all the time. I mean, even this week, we got an email from someone that lives here in Washington up north, and they're like, I'm an old guy. I've been in this industry for 30 years. And he was like, it's so good to see young people who are doing well. And I'm like running successful businesses. It feels like such an anomaly that it's like celebrated, and it's like such a big deal. And yeah, absolutely. Like we've like been at conferences and people like come up to us because they're just excited to see like another group of Black people. I mean, it's just so wild because there's so many of us, and yet we're just still so isolated, and it's like 2020,
Yeah. Do you, can I ask you an honest question? At least in the photo industry or like influencer, I'll even just generalize and say like a millennial, vibes. Do you feel like, at some level, if, people talk about pushing the needle, is it getting better at that level? Obviously, politically, America as a whole, not great. Obviously, not great. But do you think in the photo world per se, or in the creative industry, do you feel like it's getting better, or do you think it's kind of like, I don't know, like we see media pushing it?
Yeah,
better?
I feel like this is a really great question, and I'm going to answer it really honestly.
Do it.
I feel like the performance is better. Yes. I think that I feel like a lot of what we're seeing is performative allyship and people just making sure that they're doing the right things. But like racism is like at the root of the heart, right? Like, so this is like real serious change that has to take place, and whatever's trending, we're going to always try our best to be on the right side of it. So yeah, I mean, it feels better. But I mean, I think it's going to take some time to really see like if it's better. And it's not just in the photo industry. I mean, it's in the blogging industry. It's in the influencing industry. It's across the board, because this idea of oppression is what this country and this nation and so much of our values and what we do is built off of. And like, that's not something that's just going to change because the whole world went crazy in 1 year, There's a lot that has to be unlearned and undone, not just in white people, but in Black people too. Like these standards, these ideals of how we carry out our life, like these things are ingrained in me too. And I have to unlearn them and learn what it feels like to be liberated from them and function in like this new way of thinking that has to be learned. Right. And so racism and oppression and all of these things is just so interesting. It's such an interesting, it's something I think about all the time, because I think, well, obviously because it's like at the forefront right now, but also I'm just like, what is the world? Sorry about courage. It's all good. It is what it is.
She can speak.
But I think about it because as a Black woman in America, like it doesn't get any lower at this point. Right. And we're seeing that. We saw that last week. It was devastating to see how that whole situation with Breonna Taylor played out. And it sent a message to Black women, especially, that our lives don't matter and that we're not important. And as I'm raising 3 girls, like it's something I think about all the time, because I'm like, what is it going to look like for them? Like, what is it going to feel like for them to stand in confidence in this world that is like really set up against them,
Totally.
And all of my ancestors that came before me that have, lived this out for the last 400 years. So I think, I'm sure that like for people who came before us that experienced like actual slavery and Jim Crow and things like that, things have gotten better. But, I think it's not necessarily that things have gotten better. I think more it's equilateral because it's new issues now. Like we've got like the prison system and all of those different things. It's not the same, but it is the same in some ways. And I think covert racism is worse than outward racism because you never really know who you're dealing with. And I think that's also something that we've seen in the industry here of late. There's all of these like secret pages or not so secret pages where photographers are outing racist photographers. And like, it's just like, man, like you don't even, I mean, without throwing out names, like there's a husband and wife team that we really looked up to that was like saying different things. And when I know.
Yeah, they were on the podcast.
Oh, geez. And when I saw them, I was
at our conference, you know.
I mean, I looked up to these people and respected them. And so to see like some of the things that were said or like from the heart about what they think about Black people and their thoughts, like that's crushing, you know? And it's just like all of this time, I would always wonder why we could never really make a connection. Like I felt like we were cool, but I felt like there was always like this wall. And now I understand. And so I would almost rather just know where you stand than think that there's, you know, and so I don't have an answer for you, Adam.
And that's for me, that's a benefit of coming from Virginia, like in like, our cat, sorry. And like, so like full disclosure, like
you need to have video so people can see all of the things that are going on in the background.
Again, coming like from where I come from, where there's a deep-rooted history of racism and segregation, like I kind of like was brought up to be prepared and expected almost in a way, like, hey, expect that like this white person might be cool, but they might do some shady stuff and you gotta be prepared for that. And a lot of times, like when I see these things come up, I'm just like, oh, and no offense to you, you're white. I don't want to paint all white people.
It's all good.
Like,
it's all good, man.
But ultimately, I'm like, oh, well, that's just a white person being white. And I'm just like, okay, well, you know, they, you know, have skewed views towards police brutality and segregation. And I mean, that's just what they do in a way. And so I'm more impressed and shocked when they do quote unquote the right thing as opposed to do the status quo. So like I was talking with Jace, I want to say Easton Reynolds. I want to say just Easton Reynolds of the $100,000 or six figure. I say 100. The 6-figure photographer. And like I was really, really impressed and really surprised by like his heart for the community and for like the people of color, because like and how he came across. Like if he would have just came across as a normal white guy and like said this, that, or like, yeah, you know, America is a great country and like you can be anything. If he was like the normal, like, yeah, America is a great country and like lift yourself, I would have been like, okay, all right, cool, blah, 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 cool. Just give me the information and you know, we're good to go. But when he spoke from his heart, it's like, you can't oppress a group of people for 400 years and then tell them in 50 years to like pick yourself up by your bootstrap. He just, the way he came across, I was more impressed by that. And like, oh, wow, this guy gets it. Like, that's more shocking to me than like, oh, you know, well, you know, Black people aren't as smart as white. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I guess that's what he believes. Okay, cool. Type of thing. So, and again, growing up around the Confederate flag, like, at least I know where you stand. Like, if I ask you for a cup of sugar and you tell me no and spit at my feet, all right, well, I should have expected it. You got the flag. But if like out here, what she said with the covert, when you think people are cool and like all of a sudden they call the cops on you because, you know, you parked in your yard and they thought you were like, you know, breaking and entering your own house. It's like, wait, what do you mean? I thought you were cool, but okay, all right. So that whole thing is like, so I've just been raised different. So
no, totally.
And then I come here west and I'm just like, oh, you guys live in a bubble. You think it's all sunshine and rainbow. It's not. Come to the east, come to the south. And I'm like, you know, the news and all this stuff being filmed. Like, yeah, this is what's normal to me.
Right. No, 100%. One thing I want to ask, you know, since we're just there. This was not on my list of topics, but it's good to talk about. You know, and I think it was something that we could touch on. But I want to know, you know, we kind of alluded to, you know, people in the industry that had come out in a different way or a surprising way, or you know, had and not just like the couple you guys talked about, but I've seen lots of photographers because I'm in all this education and I'm looking for guests, right? I'm like looking who's interesting, who's cool, whatever, and then you know you see some stuff and you're like, oh, this is horrible, and there's some stuff too where it's like people's past, right? They come clean about something like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and I don't know how to handle that. And then there are people that are like, that retweet the president and what they say, or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is very obvious. I want to ask you though, for people listening, right? And maybe they're like, maybe they're baby anti-racist. We'll call it that. Like white people listening, they're baby anti-racist. But again, like they saw some of the photographers get outed, or their favorite photographers, people's workshops they've been to, or whatever. Maybe they've said something silly in high school, right? Or whatever, and it's not silly, right? Sorry, that they said something pretty awful if they said it now, or whatever. What is, and this, even if you have to boil it down to just Ike and Tash's opinion, what is their path personally to redemption? If maybe they've said something silly, or they've commented, horribly or whatever. Because I think that's something, that's the question a lot of people don't want to ask. It's like, we talk about the questions of ask your black friends, which again, some people are like, hey, don't ask your black friends, like leave them alone, which is again, everybody's got their own policy. But for folks who maybe are, because that's something I think about, is like, okay, but what about the people in Georgia who are like, yeah, like, okay, yeah, like I get it, all right. And then, Facebook maybe reminds them of something dumb they posted 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they go, oh, crap. Like, I love Ike and Tash. Do I need to tell them? Do you get what I'm saying? And I don't even know, but this is...
I know exactly what you feel. And like, I think it's kind of... There's a situation, I think it was the governor of Virginia or the mayor of Virginia that like had did some blackface like 5 years ago, got caught up doing blackface, and like...
Yeah.
A lot of the woke, like, liberals were like shocked and was like, he needs to like resign and like, he needs to like repent and all this stuff and come clean. And most black people were like, nah, he's a white guy. It was like, again, back to my point, like as white people doing, it was in high school. And we're like, all right, I'm not going to like indict you on something that you did 5-10 years ago that you didn't know any better. Cause we speak. So I might say something today that I might not like in 5 years.
But also like, I don't think there is a path to redemption. Like, I don't think that black people are looking for white people to like confess their sins. Like, I'm not Jesus. Like, I'm not a Catholic priest. I'm not looking for that. I just want to know that like, you hear me, you feel me, you understand like what I'm saying. Even if you don't understand, you're going to make space and hold space for me and to try to understand. And you're going to do the work, like whatever that looks like for you, whether that's signing up for a course, like my friend Monique does anti-racism courses. She's incredible. Whether that's, teaching your kids about racism, like this, like, I don't see color is like one of the worst things that you can say to young kids, because it like, it basically dilutes the beauty of the differences of who we are. But it's like, I'm not looking for any apologies. I'm not looking for like any hugs or any like come to Jesus kumbaya moments. I just want you to be like, yo, this sucks. And I didn't realize that it was like as bad. Like, I'm seeing it now for the first time. How do I stand in the gap for you? How do I not become an ally, but how do I become an accomplice to doing what I need to do to help break these systems down, to dismantle these systems that are in place? And how do I give you a break so that I can start fighting this fight? Because this is a fight that we fight all the time, right? Like, and we're tired. Like, I think 2020 for Black people has probably been one of the most iconically exhausting years of our lives. And so not only in the world, but geez, in the industry too, like there's just been so much that has happened. I mean, with the recent loss of Anisha, like one of the mouthpieces, like one of the Black mouthpieces of this industry, I didn't know her very well, but there was obviously a respect. I think any Black woman who steps out and teaches and speaks up and like deserves my respect. It just has been really exhausting. And I just want people to be like, yo, how can I hold your arms up? What can I do to support you so that you don't have to fight this? Do you need me to call this out? Yes. My friend Monique is always like, white people gather your people and we'll gather our people. And like, that's how I feel. It's like, yo, don't come to me and tell me all the things. Like, go to them. Go to your people and get them together so that my kids don't have to deal with this when they're growing up.
It's like whatever you did in the past is in the past. And if you realize what you did was wrong and you've like accepted it, then like cool, like let's let bygones be bygones. But moving forward, let's try to be better about this, that, and the third. And like Tasha said, like all of these people came out like, I apologize. I'm like, nah, we really don't care about that stuff. Like that.
Yeah.
Everybody's done something in their past. But like she said, like if you see something that might be crazy, hey, maybe you speaking out might give us a better chance. Because if only Black people say something's wrong, then you think, oh, it's just a bunch of Black people crying. Or as always, But if just as many white people speak out, but then like people might think it's a real thing.
Well,
like,
the reality is that the only reason that a lot of these movements have taken off this year is because white people have been at the front lines of them.
Yeah.
When you look at these protests and you look at these people that are speaking out, like it's white people that are upset and angry and frustrated. And it's like, we're seeing that again. It's like their voices are the ones that matter. And then they're pulling us up and they're giving us an opportunity to use our voice. But it's not that people are like listening to us per se. It's like someone is co-signing and giving us space to speak. And that's why it's taking off. Even this whole like amplify melanated voices, that wasn't started by Black people. It was started by white people who wanted to give Black people an opportunity to be heard and to be seen. And so this world is based on white being the right thing. And whether we want to like subscribe to that or not, like that is the way that this country is based on. Like, and so it takes a white person to step up and go, you need to create space. You need to listen to this person and then move out of the way. And that is kind of the problem. I think sometimes me and my sister talk about this all the time. I think white people feel like they always think they know what's best for us. And really what we need is for white people to go, here's the power, here's the seat at the the table, here's the opportunity. Now I'm going to get out of the way and I'm not going to insert myself in this anymore. And a lot of white people don't want to do that. They don't want to truly give up power, truly give up opportunities, truly give up, you know. So that makes it hard. And
me being from the South, I'm like, I get it. Like, I mean, do you really want to give up an opportunity for another 10 bands for a show or for an event just to like let somebody else is like, like we all got families to feed, you know, we all have like bills to pay. And so, and a lot of times opportunity and power and space and like, there's financials, there's like other things involved that like, you kind of like don't want to give up too much space. So I get it, but you know, the right thing is the right thing.
Totally. And I mean, that's the point. Like, and sacrifice, at least in my mind, a lot of the actions that I have in private, which I you know, I'm never going to put my stuff on Instagram that I'm doing for, you know, in the Black community, because that feels weird, right? Because I don't want to be performative. You know, that's like my biggest fear. Yeah, ironically, all my Black friends, you know, which quote unquote that's a joke, but like all my Black friends are like, nah, Adam, you can brag about it. You could like whatever, because it's like that balance. But, you know, it's, you know, what are you going to do? Like, how can you step in the gap? Like you said, for me, one of my things is like, this is, man, we're getting real deep here, but like one of my passions, you know, in my personal faith is to fight for the least, last, and the lost, right? And if you're not least or last, then you're probably lost, right? So that includes my white friends who are not sure, you know, whatever. And it's like, you know, what can I do? And, you know, that seat at the table, you know, if I get asked about that, or if I have power to influence that seat at the table, I'm like, hey, that's Ike and Tash's seat. You're like, hey, I have the people for this, you know, and like this kind of like, in the same way that the system, quote unquote, like works as it's designed, at least for me, I feel my personal responsibility as like a white dude of privilege, right? Like I'm a fat white bearded dude. Like I have no fears, right? And that's a privilege, right? But it's I feel like it's my, like Adam's responsibility is like, okay, yeah, like what can I do and use that influence to be like, okay, yeah, here's the microphone, here's the podcast, like Ike and Tash have it. Ike and Tash want to take over my Instagram, they want to have my login information, here you go. Like Monique, one of the people I talked about, it was like a week before she blew up, but like we've been friends, like Monique, everybody, like, hey, what can I do, and just, you know, pass this over. And I think a lot of people don't think like that, and I think it's I don't know, it's taking time, but it's I don't know, you know, it is.
And I don't think it's anything that's going to change tomorrow, tonight, next week, or next year. But I just hope that, like, you know, like as artists, we want to be better than we were yesterday and better than we were last year. And we just hope that like people are better than they are today next. Like, all right, if whoever's watching this is listening to this is affected, they've learned something, like, you know what, I shouldn't do that anymore. Or next time in this situation, I should speak up for this person or say something. If that helps one person, and they might influence the next person. And over time, like maybe my kids will reap the benefits or somewhat, or their kids will reap, just so that things get better eventually. Because like, you know, this, again, I brought in on a whole scale of just America and just the structure of America in general. It didn't happen overnight, and it's going to take a long time for things to get better. And so,
totally, that makes sense. So the restoration might take as long as the construction.
Yeah. You know, so if you're out there, if you did some stuff if you wore blackface to like a Halloween party last year, cool. Don't do it this year, and just try to be better.
Don't ever do it again.
Yeah.
Just it's probably not great for your skin anyway.
Yeah, no. And you know, it's interesting you say that, because like a lot of times, like in going back to like these scandals, like a lot of white people are more offended for black people than black people are. We're like, oh, we're not surprised. This is what you guys do. And they're like, oh, totally. We're so shocking. Like, nah, just don't do it again. Admit that you're wrong.
We're not speaking for the whole, because that's not true. There are a lot of black people that are appalled. Ike always likes to downplay and think that his opinion is the majority, which that's not the truth.
Look here, I'm also like a 90s kid, so I'm just like, you know, stop your whining, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think that everybody is entitled to their reaction to however they decide to feel about whatever. But I think that it's just important to recognize that everybody has like their own way of, because we will react differently to the same situation and feel very strongly about our reactions. You know, he may not think it's a big deal, or he may think it's a big deal and I may not, right? And I think that there has to be space for both of those responses when it comes to these kinds of things, you know, and just like honoring that, like, maybe people don't think it's a big deal, but there may be people that do. And just because Ike doesn't think it's a big deal doesn't mean that you are okay with whatever it is that you did. Because everybody's response is going to be different, and people are going to feel differently about your actions.
Totally. And you just got to be willing to own it, you know?
Right, exactly. No matter what it requires.
Yeah, and that's for anything, not even obviously like doing acts of racism or racist things or things that are prejudice, but like any relationship, anything is like own your ish, and you know, and own up to it, right?
change your business name to the Washington football team, and then you know what I'm talking about?
I know. I mean, we're here. Like, I trust me. Oh my gosh. Oh man. And that's the weird thing. We're just gonna be there, and then I'll finally let you guys go. But it's there. You know, again, there are questions that I have that are not valuable to ask. I think at some level, right? Because I'm just kind of teasing. But in DC, like, even the history of why people love the Cowboys instead of the Redskins, and people from DC love the Cowboys, was like, apparently the Cowboys were accepted African-American players before DC did originally, before the Redskins.
Oh, wow.
That's the story I've heard. And so that's why even in DC, there's a big Cowboys, Redskins, you know, NFC kind of thing. But even in DC, it's always like interesting to see, you know, we have African-American friends, or, you know, just people walking down the street, and they'll be wearing a Redskins thing, you know, a jacket or something like that. And at some level, this might, I don't want to say it's like first world, because it's definitely not, you know, but you're like, huh, that's interesting. You know, and it's, that's just like a random DC slice of life that I'm like, huh.
Yeah. My mom's a diehard Redskins fan. Like, she's from my family's all from Virginia. My uncle loves the Cowboys. My mom's she's like Redskins all day. She's diehard Redskins, and so like I get awesome. it. I'm could care less about any team. I'm not a big sports guy in general. Sure. I just follow the highlights and like know the main speaking points. But like for the most part, I could care less. But my mom is like Redskins all day. She goes to the games, all of that good stuff. So yeah,
that's awesome. Man, well, guys, thank you so much for being open to share and all that stuff. I know none of us had this intention of, I assume, going there, but I'm really glad that we did. I learned a lot, and hopefully people listening, you learned a lot as well, and in a safe place where, you know, hey, podcast, you're just going to listen. Nobody's judging you right now. Ike and Tash aren't judging you yet.
No. We got too much going on to be judging anybody.
Right, yeah. And I also think it gives like a different perspective. Because, you know, like, how often do you get to have these kind of conversations, as opposed to like what's your Lightroom workflow, like, you know? That's kind of okay. I get it. I do the same thing. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me about your background and like, you know, these things like that. So
Yeah, no, totally. No, like it's a weird situation that again I think some people just don't realize. But like my do you guys know Terry Baskin? She's
oh yeah, we love Terry. Yeah.
She gave this story. We were on a panel somewhere, and she was like, you know, an actual scenario for her was like, just to give people an example, was she got to a venue a little bit early, right? Because she's awesome and wants to like do her job early, and all the staff was questioning who she was, or are you supposed to be here, all that kind of stuff, and you know, we kind of joked. She was like, that doesn't happen to Adam. I was like, oh yeah, I show up anywhere and people think I'm supposed to be. Like it's nobody's, and that's kind of one of those things. They want to know
if you want water or tea or coffee or a snack. I just want the snacks.
Yeah. They're like, you're
the trend right now. The weight with the beard, that's the trend. Like, you know, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, maybe not there to look like who, what are you doing here? But now you're like, you fit in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's honestly, it's just the anti light and airy, clean shaven guys. No, I'm just kidding. I love those guys. They're on the podcast, but like I've just been hiding my double chin for 10 years.
Right there, the beard gives you like a little.
That's my deal.
Trims you up a little bit.
Guys, what do you got going on? Like, what's happening the rest of the year? Where can people go to find more Ike and Tash? And you know, you have so much going on that we didn't even get to tap into that we'll tap into another time if you feel willing.
Yeah,
you know,
have us back because I know we definitely probably got way off course from what you.
I don't mind at all though. I mean, it's if it's valuable and authentic, I'm like done. Let's roll. You know, so you know, we could do a whole podcast on your kid's name, which I'm interested about privately. I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. So,
let me tell you something, Adam.
The
most asked question was, is this a boy? That was number one. And the minute we found out it was a girl, after the disappointing size, the next question is, what's her name? And I have like not been asked a single question more than that. And the name suggestions that I've gotten over the last like 6 weeks have been so wild. I'm like, people, the reason why you're so like invested in our kids' names is because you love the current ones. Like we know how to name our children. It's the funniest thing. People are like, I had a dream that the baby's name was Hope. The Lord told me the baby's name was Joy. And I'm just like, these people are so funny. So the most popular name is Justice. That's what people feel like we should name the baby because it's like a year of justice and blah, blah, blah. Sure. It's not going to happen, but
it's a cool name though. Like Justice Haynes is a cool name, but maybe
it's just too predictable. Can't do it.
Yeah, no, totally. I get that. I know, man, we have never said this on the podcast. My wife and I don't have any kids, but we talk about it hypothetically. And once she wouldn't let me have Adam Jr., she didn't like that at all. And which is fine. We were joking about Alex, right? Like, you know, what you ever think about. Yeah. But Alexander means defender of the people, which I was like,
I like.
I was like, okay, like that is what I want, you know, for our lives. So it's kind of interesting. Like there are very like obvious names, right? And you're like, okay, yeah. And then like I went to school with a faith and a hope and a joy, and then you have courage.
Wisdom was wisdom before she was wisdom.
Wisdom was wisdom before we knew she was a girl. Courage was courage, but he didn't know because he was supposed to name Courage, but he didn't come up with a name because he knew that wasn't going to go down. No,
I didn't come up with a name because you was going to name it. She's like, oh, so the first baby, Wisdom, was like, you know, we're like, oh, listen, so no, I'm naming this baby Wisdom. It doesn't matter. It's going to be Wisdom. I'm
Dang,
like,
he makes me sound so bad.
So then she's like, but you can name the next baby. So then the next baby comes and I'm like, all right, well, let me rub my hands together because I get to name this baby. And then she's like, no, that won't work. I'm like, fine, go ahead and name the baby.
That's not true. That's not what happened, but we don't have enough time for that. But here's what I will say about
Ike. So I just tapped out. I'm like, I know better. I'm just not even going to try.
Do you like these kids' names?
They're cool.
Okay. I mean, everybody loves their names. Like, I clearly did not mess this up. But here's the thing.
I care about what everybody loves. Anyway.
I couldn't come. My name all over the internet used to be Photo Me Latasha. And then 2 or 3 years later, Ike changed his name to...
There was no 2 or 3 years later. As soon as I started Instagram, that's when I was...
Then he became Photo Me Ike. Here's the thing. I can't trust a man that can't come up with his own Instagram handle to name my children. Like, if you can't come up with your own...
on brand.
Nah, there was no brand. These are separate accounts. So here's the thing. He wants to name this baby K-Rona. It's not going to happen.
Look, Ronisha or Ronisha, like...
I know Renisha, and that's a cool name. But
oh my god,
I'm just saying,
in honor of
coronavirus. So I mean, we don't have a name for baby girl yet. We just call her Nunu. But
okay,
you guys will know soon enough.
I love it. All right, guys. Where can people go for more Ike and Tash? Tell us the Patreons, the YouTubes, the Instagrams. Where can people go to get more of you guys?
So if you're looking for Ike and Tash, the photography team, anywhere online, just put in at Ike and Tash and we'll come up. Our website is www.ikeandtash.com. And then if you just hang out on our website, you'll find your way to each of us, which is really cool. Our website's super interactive, so you can see what we do together, but also see what we do apart. If you're just looking for me, I am online as It's Tosh Haynes. And my blog is wisdomandcourage.com.
Oh, just Photo Me Ike, PHOTOMEIKE.
Unoriginal Photo Me Ike.
And
that's
on Instagram, on everywhere is Photo Me Ike. Okay, it's easy, it's on brand. Okay, it works. Why complicate things?
I love it, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. It was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Man, what a powerful, sobering, and also fun, episode to listen through with Ike and Tash. I just, that was our first time kind of talking other than over Instagram, and I just love their heart. I love their honesty, their perspective. And guys, I think one of the purposes of having this episode come out when it was that it was hopefully, it's not coming out when it's hot or when it's easy. Like we all sense the attention being less than it was at other times this year. And for me, that is part of the issue, is this needs to be ongoing work, and including in my life. And so not to make that about me, but that is our goal here at the Bearded Talk. So thankful for them to have them on. Definitely go subscribe to Ike's Patreon. I follow everything that they do on Instagram just because it's interesting and awesome, and they're just really good at what they do, which I think is really, really cool, and they're fun. Love the family vibes, and I just think that they're doing unique stuff that is still, even in the industry, like not being done as well as it could be, and they're doing it really, really well. So that's they're killing it. So go check out all their stuff. Ike and Tash everywhere online. They're awesome, guys. Have a wonderful day. Keep being awesome.